Mercedes didn't build the fastest Mercedes on the road. Two engineers did. After Mercedes said no factory, no budget, just a rented mill outside Stuttgart, and one obsession: build something that could outrace purpose-built race cars. You know what that became? That growl before the car's even in view. AMG. But here's what nobody tells you. Most AMG badges on the road today aren't real AMGs. Not even close. Two engineers, one impossible idea. Let's rewind all the way back to the 1960s. Inside Mercedes-Benz, there were two engineers named Hans Werner Aufrecht and Erhard Melcher. Both of them worked in engine development, and both of them were obsessed with one thing: performance. In the mid-1960s, they quietly built a race-tuned version of the Mercedes 300 SE engine and handed it off to a privateer driver named Manfred Schick to compete in the German Touring Car Championship. That engine won 10 races that season. Word started to spread inside the industry that these two guys inside Mercedes had a gift for squeezing performance out of engines that Mercedes itself had built for comfort, not speed. But here's where the story gets interesting. Mercedes-Benz as a company wasn't interested in chasing performance the way Aufrecht and Melcher were. The corporate focus was luxury, reliability, and refinement. So instead of staying and fighting for a performance division that didn't exist yet, Aufrecht made a decision that a lot of people at the time thought was crazy. In late 1966, he left Mercedes-Benz entirely. He convinced Melcher to leave with him, and together in 1967, they founded their own company in a rented former mill building in a small town called Burgstall, just outside Stuttgart. They named it AMG, the A for Aufrecht, the M for Melcher, and the G for Grossasbach, Aufrecht's hometown. 3 letters, one engineering philosophy: take what Mercedes builds and make it faster than anyone thought possible. This wasn't a garage side project that stumbled into success. These were two of the most talented engine engineers in Germany, betting everything on the idea that Mercedes-Benz owners secretly wanted more fire under the hood than the factory was willing to give them. And it turns out they were completely right. The red pig that shocked the racing world. For the first few years, AMG mostly built its reputation quietly, tuning engines for privateer race teams who wanted more power out of their Mercedes-based cars. But everything changed in 1971 at one of the toughest endurance races in Europe, the 24 Hours of Spa in Belgium. Here's what makes this moment so wild. AMG took a Mercedes 300 SEL, a massive, heavy 4-door luxury sedan built for chauffeuring executives around in total comfort, and decided to turn it into a race car. Think about how absurd that sounds. This wasn't a lightweight sports car. It was a land yacht, built for cruising, not cornering. AMG bored out the engine to 6.8 liters, an enormous displacement for the era, and dropped it into that same heavy body. They painted it bright red. Drivers and mechanics on the grid started calling it the Red Pig, partly as a joke, because it looked like nothing that belonged on a racetrack full of purpose-built sports cars. Nobody was laughing by the end of the race. That 4,000-pound sedan, driven by Hans Heyer and Clemens Schickentans, finished second overall and first in its class, beating cars that were lighter, smaller, and purpose-built for exactly this kind of racing. A luxury sedan had just embarrassed some of the best race cars in Europe. That single result is the moment AMG stopped being a niche tuning shop that only insiders knew about, and became a name that the entire performance car world suddenly had to take seriously. Without that race, without that ridiculous oversized red sedan humiliating the competition, there's a real chance the AMG badge you see on cars today simply wouldn't exist. One engineer, one engine. In those early years, AMG didn't have assembly lines. It didn't have robots or mass production. What it had was a small team of obsessive engine builders and a philosophy that still defines the brand today. One man, one engine. Every single AMG engine, from the very beginning, was built from start to finish by a single technician, not a production line where different hands touch different parts. That technician would source the components, assemble the block, fit the internals, and do the final testing themselves. This wasn't a marketing gimmick, In the early days, it was simply how a small operation with limited resources survived. But as AMG grew, they kept the philosophy on purpose, because it worked and because it created something no mass-produced engine could ever offer: personal accountability. To this day, every hand-built AMG V8 carries a small nameplate on the engine cover with the signature of the individual technician who built it. If you own certain AMG models, you can look under the hood and see the actual name of the person responsible for that engine. That's not something you'll find on a regular Mercedes, and it's not something you'll find on most cars, period. It's a level of craftsmanship that feels almost old world in an industry dominated by robotic assembly, and it's a huge part of why AMG owners feel a completely different kind of connection to their car, from outside rebels to official Mercedes division. For years, AMG operated as its own independent company, completely separate from Mercedes-Benz, even though everything they built was based on Mercedes platforms. But their reputation had grown too big to ignore. Wealthy Mercedes owners were quietly sending their cars to this small shop outside Stuttgart to get the AMG treatment, and Mercedes-Benz itself started to notice just how much demand there was for what these two engineers were building. In the early 1990s, Mercedes and AMG officially teamed up for the first time, co-developing the C36 AMG, the very first Mercedes model to wear the AMG badge from the factory. It was a huge shift. Instead of buyers modifying their cars after purchase, they could now walk into a Mercedes dealership and drive out with AMG performance built in from day one. Then, in 1999, Daimler Chrysler, the parent company of Mercedes at the time, bought a majority stake in AMG. By 2005, Mercedes-Benz owned AMG outright, and the company was rebranded as Mercedes-AMG. Here's what's genuinely fascinating about that transition, though. A lot of independent performance shops lose their identity the moment a giant corporation swallows them up. That did not happen with AMG. If anything, becoming part of Mercedes gave AMG more resources to lean even harder into performance. They stopped being a tuner that modified existing Mercedes models and became a full-blown engineering division capable of designing cars completely from the ground up. Cars like the SLS AMG and the AMG GT. Vehicles that were never regular Mercedes models to begin with. Mercedes had essentially bought the performance soul it never had internally, and then let that soul run wild with corporate-level resources behind it. So what actually makes an AMG different today? This brings us to the big question, the one that's probably why you clicked on this video in the first place. If AMG is fully owned by Mercedes now, what genuinely separates an AMG from a regular Mercedes wearing a sportier badge? Let's break it down piece by piece. Start with the engines. AMG doesn't just take a standard Mercedes engine and turn up the boost. Many AMG engines are designed, and in the case of the V8S, still hand-built, at AMG's headquarters in a Falterbach, using a completely different set of internals. We're talking stronger connecting rods, forged pistons, larger turbochargers, and engine management software tuned from scratch specifically for performance. Even when the displacement number looks similar to a regular Mercedes engine on paper, the actual hardware inside is a different animal entirely. Then there's the drivetrain and suspension. AMG models typically get upgraded transmissions with faster, more aggressive shift logic, along with specially tuned all-wheel drive systems that shift more power to the rear wheels for a sharper, more playful feel in corners. The suspension, steering, and brakes all get their own dedicated engineering pass. Those massive drilled brake rotors and multi-piston calipers you see on an AMG aren't cosmetic. They're built to handle the kind of repeated hard braking from triple-digit speeds that would destroy a standard Mercedes brake system in a single afternoon at a track. And underneath all of that hardware sits AMG's quiet secret weapon: software. Throttle mapping, traction control calibration, and drive mode logic are all rewritten specifically to make the car feel more alive, more responsive, more connected to the driver. A regular Mercedes is engineered to isolate you from the road. An AMG is engineered to put you right back in the middle of it. Now, before we get into what might be the single most addictive part of owning an AMG, that unmistakable sound, I want to ask you for a quick favor. If you're enjoying learning the real story behind this badge, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me which car brand or badge you want us to break down next, and if you haven't already, subscribe and tap that notification bell. It genuinely helps a smaller channel like ours keep making deep dives like this one. Okay, let's get back into it. The composers of combustion. If you've ever stood next to an AMG when someone fires it up, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That deep, chest-thumping growl, the little pops and bangs on deceleration. It's genuinely addictive, and it is absolutely not an accident. AMG has an entire team of engineers in a Falterbach dedicated specifically to how their cars sound, tuning everything from idle burble to the crackle you get lifting off the throttle at high RPM. A huge part of that sound comes from something called a hot V engine layout. On most turbocharged V8s, the turbochargers sit on the outside of the engine block. AMG flips that layout and places the turbos inside the V, nestled between the two-cylinder banks. That might sound like a small detail, but it dramatically shortens the path exhaust gases have to travel before hitting the turbo, which improves throttle response and gives the exhaust note a sharper, more immediate character. AMG's engineers test and refine these sounds in specialized acoustic testing chambers, analyzing the exact frequencies produced across every RPM range and every drive mode. Even that iconic crackle and pop on downshifts is deliberately engineered. The engine software intentionally allows a small amount of unburned fuel into the hot exhaust system on deceleration, which ignites and produces that signature bang. And with modern noise regulations getting stricter every year, AMG has gotten creative, using the car's interior speakers to enhance certain frequencies of engine sound inside the cabin. Some purists call it cheating. Most owners call it brilliant. Either way, it's proof that AMG treats sound as seriously as horsepower, because for a lot of owners, that sound is the entire point. Real AMGs and imposters. Here's something a lot of newer car buyers don't realize, and it genuinely trips people up when they're shopping for a used Mercedes. Not every car wearing an AMG badge is actually a full AMG. Mercedes also sells something called the AMG line, which is essentially an appearance package. You get sportier bumpers, bigger wheels, some AMG badging, and a firmer-feeling suspension tune, but none of the hand-built engine, none of the reworked drivetrain, none of the actual performance engineering that defines a genuine AMG model. It's the automotive equivalent of wearing a superhero costume without actually having any of the powers, and dealerships aren't always in a hurry to explain that difference to someone who just wants their car to look fast. A true AMG, the kind with a 43, 53, 63, or higher badge, or a standalone model like the GT, comes with real hardware differences from the ground up, a genuinely different engine, a genuinely different drivetrain, and in many cases, that hand-signed engine plaque under the hood proving an actual technician built it, start to finish. And enthusiasts who know the brand can usually spot the difference instantly, sometimes just from the sound alone before the car even comes into view, sometimes just from the way it sits or the way it pulls away from a stoplight. There's actually an informal little ritual among genuine AMG owners called the AMG nod, where two AMG drivers passing each other on the road will give a subtle nod or wave, a quiet acknowledgement that says, "I know what you're driving, and you know what I'm driving." It's a small thing, but it says a lot about how tight-knit AMG ownership culture actually is. This distinction matters well beyond bragging rights, too. It affects resale value, insurance costs, and what you can actually expect the car to do if you ever take it to a track day. Owning a real one puts you in a fairly exclusive club, and that club knows exactly who the real members are, and exactly who's just borrowing the badge. Can AMG survive the electric era? Now here's the question that's hanging over the entire performance car industry. Right now, AMG included. The auto industry is shifting hard toward electrification, and that presents a genuinely difficult problem for a brand whose entire identity was built on the sound and feel of a hand-built combustion engine. How do you keep that emotional connection alive when the thing that created it in the first place, the engine, might not be under the hood anymore? It's not just a marketing challenge either. It's an identity crisis for a company whose whole reason for existing was making combustion engines feel more alive than anyone thought they could. Mercedes AMG is already deep into answering that question. They've released hybrid performance models that pair combustion engines with electric motors borrowed directly from Formula One technology, including an electrically driven turbocharger that all but eliminates lag, giving instant torque delivery alongside that traditional AMG snarl. They've paired four-cylinder engines with electric assistance to produce horsepower numbers that used to require a V8, which sounds almost unbelievable until you actually feel one accelerate. They're also developing dedicated electric AMG models built on a performance-focused electric platform, engineering things like simulated gear shifts and digitally generated sound profiles to try to replicate some of that emotional drama electric motors don't naturally produce on their own. It's a genuinely difficult tightrope to walk. Electric motors are objectively faster in a straight line than almost anything AMG has ever built with a combustion engine. Full stop. No argument. But speed was never really the entire story with AMG. Emotion was the noise, the drama, the theater of the whole experience. And whether that emotion survives the transition to electric power, whether AMG can make a silent car feel the way the Red Pig sounded at Spa in 1971, is probably the single biggest question facing the brand over the next decade. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. Two engineers who couldn't get Mercedes-Benz to chase performance the way they wanted, so they walked away and built it themselves in a rented mill building with nothing but talent and stubbornness. A ridiculous, oversized red sedan that humiliated purpose-built race cars at Spa and put AMG on the map forever. A one-man, one-engine philosophy that turned engine building into genuine craftsmanship instead of an assembly line process. And decades later, that scrappy outside operation isn't just tolerated by Mercedes-Benz. It's the beating heart of the entire brand's performance identity, hand-picked and fully absorbed into the company that once had no room for what Aufrecht and Melcher wanted to build. A regular Mercedes is built to make you comfortable. An AMG is built to make you feel something. That difference, more than any spec sheet, is the entire reason this badge means what it means today. And that's the real story behind the AMG badge. Not a marketing gimmick, not a trim-level Mercedes invented in a boardroom, but two obsessive engineers who bet everything on their own vision of what a Mercedes could be, and ended up building one of the most respected performance brands on the planet from a rented mill building outside Stuttgart. From a hand-tuned racing engine in the 1960s to a red sedan shocking the racing world at Spa, to becoming the performance soul of one of the biggest car companies on earth, that's a story most people driving past an AMG on the highway have absolutely no idea about. If you learned something new today, that's exactly why this channel exists. We dig into the real engineering, the real history, and the real stories behind the badges you see every single day, but never actually stop to think about. So if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, because we've got a lot more of these breakdowns coming, and you genuinely don't want to miss them. Drop a comment down below and let me know, would you rather have a full AMG with all that hand-built craftsmanship, or does the smooth, silent luxury of a Mercedes Maybach speak to you more? I read every single comment, and I love seeing where you all land on this one. If you want to go even deeper into this world, go check out our video on Maybach right after this one. It pairs perfectly with everything we just talked about here. Thanks for riding along with me on this one. I'll see you in the next video.